Okay, it looks like people are still trickling in, but a little bit slower at this point. So let me just make sure that you understand that there's no audio, there's no raising your hand, that we'll do questions and answers, but we'll have specific break times designated for that. One thing we have found, especially with the introduction, is a lot of times you have a question, but in the next few slides, those questions will be answered. So if you can just hold your questions, jot them down so you don't forget them, and make sure they're answered within those slides, because we're just going to be talking about clarifying the slides. The question should be about the introduction and how to put together this portfolio. This presentation is being recorded, and you can see that link there. That link will be posted several times within the chat box for you. There's one that has the fall training at the end, and you will have access to this PowerPoint as well as the sample strand. So hopefully you saw that within the link and you downloaded it. If not, you're free to download it now. If for some reason you accidentally close out of this Zoom, you can rejoin with the same link. The presentation that's being recorded will not be up for at least a week. We have to get it, professionally ready for posting. So give us about a week and then check back to this site that is listed on here. Okay, I think we have a couple hundred people, so let's make sure that you're all in the right place. You should be here if you have never compiled an MCAS-Alt or you haven't compiled one in at least 3 years. Today we have part A and part B, and this is the basic information needed to compile the MCAS-Alt. These are the foundational skills. We also try to give you some tips and tricks along the way. And Kevin, who is here with me, he is our contractor from Cognia. He's going to talk about how to do the forms and graphs that are online. So you don't want to miss that at all. If this is new to you, you definitely want to attend the ELA writing session. This focuses on specific requirements for ELA because they are unique requirements. If you're a teacher for grades 5, 8, or 9, or 10, you want to come to the science and technology engineering session. This again has unique requirements, and we want to make sure that you get all that information if you're in those grades. So let's get started. This is what we hope to cover, not hope to cover, we definitely will cover this morning. There's quite a bit, but it's good, solid information. It would be really helpful if you had a pen and paper to take notes or digitally taking notes, however, whatever works for you. But there's some times when I mention some things that are really important for you to focus on, either come back to it another time, but you should definitely have some way to keep track of it. So let's get started. I like to get this out of the way because it isn't very pleasant, but it's very important. So MCAS-Alt security requirements. We are at the department, as you know, find the MCAS security very important. And we also find the MCAS-Alt security very important. So what does that mean for you? Really, it just means that if you are putting together a portfolio, and we can take a look at this, you're going to put it together as just authentic. You're going to capture the student's independence and accuracy authentically. You're not going to fabricate the evidence or replicate it or alter it in any way. Even if you're doing small groups, you still have to do individualized accuracy and independence. We're not telling you not to do small group, just find a way to collect the accuracy and independence on those individuals. Unfortunately, this past summer, we had 3 breaches of portfolios. That means the superintendent was informed, the principal was informed, the teacher had to be spoken with. So we do a fact-finding investigation. It goes all the way up the chain. So if you feel that you are, really in trouble in January and you don't think you can get this done, don't do anything stupid. Okay. This is October. You have plenty of time to make plans to input your data every single week to make sure you keep up with it, because if you wait till the end, you are going to have trouble finishing it. So I just want to make sure that you realize how important this is, that we don't take this lightly, and your license is not worth that. Okay, so that's why I want to get this over with right away, and then we'll get to the good stuff. So what is the purpose of the MCAS-Alt? You might wonder what that is, or perhaps you know after all these years. But when we take a look at it, it is the law. All students that are receiving Massachusetts funds are required to participate in the assessment. And that means all students. And because the MCAS-Alt is embedded in the daily instruction, it's not like something the student can stay home from, as they do in the MCAS. There is no opting out. Parents may think they can opt out, but there is no opting out. And again, because this is embedded in your daily instruction, you're just going to keep taking that accuracy and independence and documenting that throughout the time. It also includes difficult to assess students for accountability. It helps to make sure that our students with significant cognitive disabilities are getting the kind of education they deserve that's based on the standard, the curriculum frameworks. And we want to make sure that we're using those assessments to provide those challenging and standard-based instructions that's based on data and evidence. So how do we do this? How do we start this? So one of the things we use is something called the resource guide, is what we call it for short, but the full name is the Resource Guide to the Massachusetts Curriculum Frameworks for Students with Disabilities. And this year it will say fall of 2021. This resource guide incorporates curriculum and content standards from all the content areas. So that's ELA, math, and science and technology. These resource guides are intended for all students with disabilities who have not yet mastered the performance expectations for students in their grade. And we're going to take a look at the resource guide to see how that works. How many of you have either seen or used the resource guide since you have been in school? There's a quick poll for you. I know you can't see it. If you don't mind just answering that, it gives us an idea of who has any familiarity with it. Almost there. I know you can't see it, but it's almost complete. And it looks like about half and half, not quite. So you can see this, right? 45% say they have seen it and 55% they have not. So that's quite a few that have seen it. And I'm so happy to hear that, because I used to share it when I was in my school district with the gen ed teachers. It was always helpful for them to see how to break down certain skills for those students that, needed a little extra help. Sometimes you don't know how to get to those students and that skill that they're missing. So here's one of the pages. This is in language, English language arts. So we're going to start with the content area. So the content area is just the content in which MCAS-Alt assesses. So that's ELA, math, and science and technology. And I think there's a click for that. Now there we go. So that's the content area. And then we have the strand. So in this case, the strand that we're looking at in this resource guide is language. And that just means a smaller group of standards that are organized around a theme. And in this case, the theme is language. Then we have something called a cluster heading. The cluster heading is basically the topic, and a cluster heading is a smaller group of related standards. So in this case, the cluster heading is about vocabulary acquisition and use. You must use vocabulary acquisition and use for language to assess. If you use the forms and graphs online, you can't make a mistake. The program forces you to use the correct one. But sometimes teachers are looking through this and they see other cluster headings in language and they want to use that. This is the only one you can use. And last but not least are the standards. And I think you're all well aware of what the standards are, but the standards are just what a student should know and be able to do before they exit in that grade. And as you know, our students can't always do things at grade level. So we're going to take a look at what makes this resource guide so special. So you see at the top of the page, it says entry points and access skill to language standards in grades pre-K to 1. So we don't assess pre-K to 1, right? We start at grade 3. We go 3 to 8 and 10, high school. However, the beautiful thing about this resource guide is that you can spiral back to the level of your student's need. Now, in this case, we're just looking at the pre-K to 1 standards. We work with content specialists and they help us to break down the standards as low as they can go without losing the essence of the standard. So the first thing we see are entry points. And at the top of that page, you'll see the large arrow goes from more complex to less complex. We always start at the more complex. But what is an entry point, you're thinking? Well, take a look at, you can see them behind there. These are outcomes. And so you can see match words to symbols, that's fine, Kev. These are outcomes that are described, right? But they're based on the standard at a lower level of complexity. That continuum at the top, as I said, you start at the more complex and you can work down to the lower complex. This entry point, it forms the basis of measurable outcomes in each portfolio strand. This is what I call a highlightable moment. That entry point is what you choose and it forms something called a measurable outcome. And in this portfolio strand, the strands that we're talking about, we're going to be looking at how you assess the student on that entry point. Then we have students who are unable to use entry points. So we have something called access skills. You'll see that in the far left column, and it says it's on the top. Make sure that you see that it says access skill. And access skills are skills that students are using who are just working on developmental skills, such as communication skills or motor skills. However, they must be addressed in the standards-based activities. These access skills are found at the lowest grade level in each domain and strand. Now, you don't go to access skill if you can't find an entry point. If your student is not really access skills, then you need to email me and we can work on how to find you a low entry point. But you shouldn't be picking access skills if your student is truly not access skills. So access skills are students who are not addressing curriculum content. They don't directly interact with the curriculum at a cognitive level, and that's because of their severe cognitive disability. This is for students with only emerging symbolic communication skills, and they are addressing developmental milestones. This is things like responding to stimuli, grasping objects. We have some examples here for you to look at. However, they are going to be doing these access skills in the context of a standards-based activity in whichever required strand or domain for that student's grade. So for example, here's one for a student who's activating a device with a pre-recorded word for classmates during an antonym naming game, and that's an ELA language. The student's skill is to activate a device, but you can see it's being done during a standards-based activity. The next one is, as students release a block from their grasp, the teacher counts as each block drops into the bin. What's the student doing? Releasing the block from their grasp. This is in math and operations and algebraic thinking. So take a minute, think about your students. Is my student only working on developmental milestones? Does their IEP have a lot of just OT and SLP goals? So think about that for a second, and then I think we're going to look at how we break down this resource guide. So as I go through this, think about your students, okay? So the very first one is the standard as written at a grade 6 for the number system. It says, understand a rational number as a point on the number line. Extend number line diagrams and coordinate axes familiar from previous grades to represent points on the line and in the plane with negative number coordinates. If you have a student that can do this standard, then you shouldn't be here. We have something called grade level and competency portfolios. So if that's what your student is able to do at grade level, then you should get information about that. Let's go down a little bit more because we're going to take that standard and break it apart. Here's a possible entry point. Determine the coordinates of points plotted on a coordinate grid. Example from any quadrant. Could your student do that? If not, let's go down a little bit further. Could they add and subtract numbers, 1 and 2 digit whole numbers? Maybe. Let's go down a little bit more. Maybe your student's a little bit lower. Can they match visual representations of simple fractions to the fraction itself? Okay, so those are all entry points. There's a lot more in between all of those. Those are just a few examples, but that gives you the idea of how you can spiral down until you find the level of need. Now, if your student is strictly working on developmental milestones, then perhaps they would be tracking objects as it is added or subtracted from a set. So that is what they would be doing in access skills. So let's see who we have with us today. Think about who will use entry points or access skills, and please answer the poll question as it comes up. This will help us. So this poll just wants to know what level your students are. Are they entry? Are they access? Do you have a mix of entry and access? Or are you unclear about the difference? And that's fine if you're unclear. Hopefully, as we go through this, you will get a better sense of whether or not your student is access or entry. As you can see, there's about 43% of you that think entry point, 7% think your access skills, 44% think you have a mix, and 7% are still unclear. So hopefully as we go by in the next hour, we'll be able to clear that up for you. Okay. Thank you, everyone. So let's take a look at the requirements. Now I want to tell you something before you put in the chat. What did you say I have to do for grade 3? Or what did you say I have to do for math? Everything that you need to know is in the educator's manual. We also have it in that material site that has been posted in the chat. There's a separate handout for you, which is very clear by grade. So watch as I go through it, jot down what you have to do. And if you miss something, the page numbers are in the top right-hand corner where it says educator's manual. This manual will answer 98% of your questions. Okay, so you can look at that before you ask your question. So anyone in grades 3 through 8 or 10 has to do one reading strand. And for reading, you're going to choose either informational or literary text. Okay, you don't have to do both. You're just going to choose one of those. Everyone in those grades has to do one language strand. And remember, I just showed you that excerpt from the resource guide that said the cluster heading was vocabulary acquisition and use. For each of those strands, the reading strand and the language strand, you're going to give us one data chart and 2 pieces of evidence for each strand. And we're going to go through all of that as we go through. And then at the very beginning, I told you that we have a separate writing presentation, right? Because of the unique because of the unique requirements, we're going to do that separately, and that will be recorded. So let's see what we have to do for math. So this is only grades 3 through 8. I'll repeat that again. This is only grades 3 through 8. You're going to complete 2 domains in each grade. So just for example, grade 4 would do number and operation fractions. That's one domain. The second domain is operations and algebraic thinking. So you can see what each grade has to do. For each of those domains, you're going to give one data chart and 2 pieces of evidence. So far you have 1 reading, 1 language, and 2 math, and 1 writing. Excuse me, I forgot writing. Okay, so you'll have 3 strands in ELA and 2 strands in math. Now let's look at high school. For high school math, you're going to choose any 3 conceptual categories. They stopped calling them domains at high school. Don't ask me why, I don't know, but that's what they call them. There are 5. You only have to choose 3. There's numbers and quantity, algebra, functions, geometry, statistics, and probability. From those 5, you choose any 3, and you're going to give us 1 data chart, 2 pieces of evidence in each of those conceptual categories. Well, these conceptual categories are very high, even breaking them down with the entry points made it difficult for the high school to find entry points for their students. So what we've done is broken it down, and the domain that feeds the conceptual category is what you're able to spiral down to. So when you use forms and graphs online, if you're in high school, you can automatically go from number and quantity to the number system if you need to. Okay, so based on your students' needs, you can spiral back to your needs. Now, everybody except for geometry goes down to grade 6, and people get in a little bit of a panic. We have broken down the entry points, even at the grade 6 level, to hopefully find something that your student is able to do. If they cannot, you can call or email me, and we can brainstorm some ideas as to how to break down those skills for you. And again, all this information is in the educator's manual, okay? And I said 5-8 in high school. For science, you are going to attend a separate training so that we can talk about that. It's about an hour. It's not even that long, and there's some good examples. So you want to come to that if you're in grades 5, 8, or high school. So let's get to the forms. One thing I really like about this slide is that most of the things on here you can get done within the next week or 2. It's very quick and easy. The only thing you can't do is the verification form. So let's start with the artistic cover. The artistic cover is optional, but it's really nice for the student to feel invested in their own work. It is their assessment, so they can draw, they can use the computer and create graphics, whatever they would like that you can do. And that slides into the front cover of the portfolio when you get the binder. The student introduction is just who they are as a learner. Now I talk about this here, but as writing, if you wanted to use this as a writing piece, you could have your speech and language person work with them to get this piece of evidence. Don't forget to ask other people. You aren't the only one teaching these students. So pull in other people and get some help from them. Get support, tell them what you need, and let them help you. The next is the student's weekly schedule. High school, middle school, no problem. You go to the front office, they print it out for you, and you put it in the binder. Elementary school, just give us the basics. Don't have to worry about, oh, Monday, Tuesday they have PT, and Wednesday, Thursday they have OT. Just give us the basic schedule for a week. It doesn't have to be how it changes week by week. don't fuss too much. We want to see where the academics are scheduled for your students. Next is the school calendar, and that's going to go on the left-hand side of the binder. So it's easily checked. We check the school dates at scoring to make sure that the work has been completed on a date that you were in school. If you're doing science over 2 years, you might want to give us the calendar over 2 years, but since you're new, that won't be a problem this year. The next is the portfolio cover sheet, and Kev's just going to click on that and show you the portfolio cover sheet. And this is the, it goes right in the front. It has all the demographics for your student, this student identification number, the grade, the school they came from, and Kev will go through this a little bit when he does forms and graphs, but I want you to be aware of it. It's an easy one to fill out and get done and have, feel like you've accomplished something as you check things off your list. You'll see at the bottom in 9 and 10, 9 says what areas, what content areas are you going to put in this binder? So it is perfectly acceptable if your student is really good at math and you think with the supports included, they could take a standard math test, MCAS test. You would just check off ELA and then you would check off the math section there. So just know that that's always an option for your students when you're talking about participation. If you think that with accommodations that your student could take the MCAS test, then by all means, give them a chance. Okay. The next one is the verification form, and that is for the parents to sign when they have had the opportunity to review the portfolio. It isn't a consent form, is it? It isn't saying, oh, I really love the MCAS-Alt. It's just for them to view what you have collected on their child. If they do not come in, can't come in, you can send them home a copy, and please make sure it's a copy, not the original, and then have them send back the parent that verification form. If none of that works, you can log your the number of attempts, like you emailed or called, and put the dates on there. Last is a photo or video consent form. If you think you're taking pictures and the student's face will be in it, you have to use the MCAS-Alt photo consent form, not the blanket one that you get from the school that you send to all the students. This is specific to the MCAS-Alt, and you keep it at school. But it's really important that you keep it at school, because if a parent calls after they see a portfolio and their student's picture in it and they didn't consent to that, it can be trouble for you. So make sure you have the file, the consent, and you keep it in file so you can get to it if you need it. And now Kev's going to show you this forms and graphs program that you're just going to love.
Thank you, Deb. So 1 second, I'm just going to switch screens from the PowerPoint into a web browser so I can show you a demo of what Deb's been talking about with forms and graphs. So 1 moment. Okay, but before I get there, I just want to show you, we've put this in the chat a couple times. This is where we keep sending you off to get the materials, both for this session and every other training that we've been doing. The intro is right at the top. So core concepts is where you are right now. So there's that PowerPoint. I'll point out specifically this sample strand. So it's just a PDF. You can download it or just open it up in a browser. And this is what we'll be building through the day. So just know, if you haven't grabbed it already, we'll make reference to this Michael Scott strand for math a couple times throughout the presentation, both today and this afternoon. So that's where you grab that. And just to point out, if you click return to materials page, there's sort of 2 pages in one. So if you, the educator's manual, the resource guides, Deb will point out some of these other handouts along the way. But this link will take you to the departments page where you can see the resource guides and the manuals are posted. So again, that's the materials side of that. But now we'll pop right into, and for now, I'll put this disclaimer on it. I'll show you where you go to get to this page to start creating your own account, but for sake of the demonstration, please just follow along with what I'm doing now, and then I promise you I'll show you how to where to get it and how to get your own account before we're done this morning. So it all begins with, it's an open system, but you have to have an account in order to use it. So the first time you come to this page, you're just going to click go to registration page, and it'll ask for two pieces of information. It wants an email address and a password to act as your unique password. It's not looking for a password, you're just choosing what you want it to be. Give it those two pieces of information, submit, and it'll create your account and log you in for the first time. I've got a demo going, so I'm just going to log in. So I can click sign in. And the first thing you're going to see is this My Account page. It will be blank when you come in here. It doesn't know anything about you, anything about your students. This isn't tied to SIMS. It's not tied to any district database. It's a completely open-ended system. You just supply the information that you want to put in for yourself, your school, your students. You build it as you go. So you can technically skip over this. I will show you though, if you take the minute, particularly if you're going to be doing several students and not just one, any information you put in here wherever it needs that information along the way, it'll populate it for you. So this information typically shows up on the portfolio cover sheet, which Deb showed you a quick sample of. So as much as you fill out, it'll populate that for you automatically, and you don't have to do it one at a time. What throws people sometimes are these two codes here, district and school code. It's looking for the official codes as used by the department as part of the SIMS and profiles system. District is always a 4-digit code and school is an 8-digit code. Most of the time, the front office can probably let you know what those are. There is a lookup if you go back in this red bar. So this red bar is a navigation bar. It'll either take you to a new page or interact with a feature of the page that you're currently on. You can go to Massachusetts Code Lookup. I'll show you really quick. It's not as intuitive as it maybe should be, but it takes you to the department's profiles page. Your mileage may vary. You can just type in a school name. I found it's not, if you don't get 100% match of what it's looking for, you don't always get a nice clean search on that, but you can try that search. The easier way might be to just use this map. You can click on the interactive region and just narrow in. So you can keep going until you see a list of schools. So kind of just zone in on your region. And then when you click a name, it'll show you information, but it's still not totally evident of what that school and district code is. Nothing will say district and school code, but what it's pointing to is this number right here. So the full 8-digit code is the school code, and then the first 4 digits are the district code. So that's how you can find it if you need to populate those. So just know school is 8, district 4. Don't put too much worry into that. It's okay to leave these blank. That's not how we tie it to reporting or something. It's just part of the demographic information that you can supply. So don't go too crazy about making sure you have those 100% accurate. It's okay if you don't. If you need to change your password, you can do it here. On this My Account page where nobody ever goes, it's down at the bottom. Hopefully you don't need it, but if you accidentally delete a student along the way, people love to accidentally click delete right at the end of the year as they're getting ready to submit, and they panic, they call, they think it's all gone. There's just pure panic in their voice as soon as you answer the phone. We're not that cruel. We don't just toast everything you did for an entire year. We're just sort of hiding it from you. So anything that was deleted for the student, you click undelete and boom, it magically comes right back and it's like you never did it. So just know if you panic and delete a student, you can bring it right back. There are a few hard deletes in the program, and I will show those to you as we go, of things that cannot be restored if you delete them, but the student at a very high level, we're just sort of hiding it from you, not really deleting it. So once you get through this My Account page, the first place you'll go to start creating work for a student is this My Student List, which is what you'll do most of the time. You'll log in and just click My Student List. Remember, open system, but knows nothing about you. You have to tell it what students you are going to put into the system. So I click Add a Student, and it'll start to build out a list of students for me. You get a generic new student, go to portfolio, this is that delete that people love to click. This is where you'll delete a whole student. It does warn you, it says, are you sure? But nobody ever reads that. They just, okay, and whoosh, away it goes. But this is what you can bring back with that restore student I just showed you. But normally you don't click delete, you go to portfolio, and you'll see the sample of that portfolio cover sheet that Deb showed you a few minutes ago. Here this is what built that. This is how you put that information to generate that form. And whenever possible, the data entry that you're building a form with looks like the form that you're trying to create. So right at the top, and again, I'll be building out that Michael Scott sample that I showed you from the samples provided for the materials for this session. So first thing you should do is give it an actual student name. SACID is another one that catches people sometimes. Sometimes there's like school IDs that you have or district level IDs. This is looking for the official SIMS-based SACID for the student. And the easy way to remember it is it's a 10-digit number that begins with 10. So 10, and then 8 more numbers after that. So a 10-digit number is what's looking for the SACID. Notice the things I put on My Account. So I get that street address, my name, anything you put on that My Account, it's pre-populated for me on this page. So as much information as you get it, that would already be done for you here. The big piece of this page is the grade. There's this red box that nobody ever reads as well. 1 second, I'm just going to adjust the spotlight for the interpreter. There we go. So nobody ever reads that, but grade is critical. If you take away nothing else from this page of this presentation right now, it's that you got to get grade right the first time that you enter it. So this is the grade that you're intending to assess for the student. So what are you going to submit for that portfolio at what grade? It's just a drop down, and I'm just going to open up the sample strand once again. I think he's a grade 4. Yep, and we do see Michael is a grade 4. So I'm going to select 4. And notice I can save this page. I still have my drop down. I could change it right now. But as soon as I leave this page, so I'm going to save it. I'm going to hop into my table of contents really quick, which is where you get everything else. Portfolio cover sheet is right where we were. I'm going to hop right back into it. And notice no more drop down. It is locked in. I cannot change it. It's a hard rule. The only way to fix this at this point, you can call tech support. They can't help you. The only fix is to start over. And the reason why that has to be so locked down is after this, it will filter only the strands appropriate for that grade. It gives you the standards that link to that grade for those strands. It'll stop you from submitting something that's not appropriate for that grade. You can't mix and match. If we allowed you to all of a sudden make it a 5, the math strands would be wrong. You could accidentally submit a strand that was not appropriate for the grade that you said you were assessing for that student. So it's locked down. It has to be that way in order to further down the line make the data appropriate for what you need for that student at that grade. So just make sure you take that time to select the right drop down from the grade. The rest of this form, basic information, it's just asking what school, where is that school, who are you, and then these text boxes or check boxes for 9 and 10 of are you doing ELA and math for that student, or as Deb mentioned, maybe they're at a higher level in math and they can take MCAS, the standard test, and you can split those, but they're just checkboxes. You're just sort of saying what the intended approach for testing for that student will be. I'll point out anything that the intent is that it's going into the binder. So this is a physical binder with the evidence that you submit. There is a printer friendly, so you can use that. It'll open a new tab that'll strip away everything else and give you a version that formats nicely to print and attach to put into the actual binder itself. I'll quickly mention some of the other forms, which everything is linked through that table of contents. So if I click table of contents, again, we'll see the portfolio cover. These are where you'll spend most of your time. Skill survey and strand cover sheet. We'll come back to that as Deb shows you the required elements of creating a strand. But all those other forms Deb was mentioning. So we've got a verification form that you get a sign off from the parent, and then those consent forms for if you're including photographs. Honestly, not a whole lot to do with these. Verification form, you're just filling in whatever blanks, and it's just getting printed out to get a sign off from the parent or the attempts that you had to show it to the parent. So not a whole lot of interaction. It's just a way to get to the form so you can generate it to do what you need to do with it. And that's where I'll stop for now. Deb's going to take you through the building blocks of how we start to create these strands, and then I'll come back and show you how to do it in the program and show you where you can go to get on this for yourself and create an account and get going at the very end of this morning. So now I'll kick it back to Deb, and she will take it from here of the building blocks of doing a strand.
Thank you, Kevin. And I don't know if you noticed there was a required portfolio contents checklist that Kevin was just on right there in that list. So that's a nice thing for you to download. It's just for you, and it's a good reminder of what's required to go into the binder. It's not required for us, but it may be helpful to you. Okay, so I want to make sure you I've said it several times, but I want to make sure that you know that all that we're talking about today, all these requirements, the data chart, the 2 pieces of evidence, this is specific to ELA reading, ELA language, and all the math. Okay, so when we're talking here about those data charts and the brief descriptions, that's what we're talking about: ELA reading, ELA language, and mathematics. Okay, so let's get going. So that lovely strand sample that maybe some of you have downloaded or maybe you've seen it, that's what we call a core set of evidence. And it's really nice when I'm right in front of you and we can just hold that little thin strand and say, this is all you need for one strand. So you have a strand cover sheet, you have a skill survey, you have a data chart, and then you have 2 pieces of primary evidence that shows student participation. Okay. And I'm going to say it again, you're going to get sick of hearing it, but the unique requirements for ELA and writing is a separate time. So that's not what we're talking about here. So we're going to take apart Michael Scott's core set of evidence. We're going to go through it piece by piece. This is the larger view. This is what it would look like completed. And now we're going to take it apart and look at the skills survey. So the skills survey is required, and this is definitely a highlightable moment. Every single strand, including math, including science and ELA writing, is going to have a skill survey. Every strand you put into that binder is going to have a skills survey, right? And we'll talk about specifics for the writing and science when we get there, but please note that you should not have a strand in there unless it has a skills survey, okay? It's basically pre-testing, which is probably what you're doing right now at the beginning of the school year. You're trying to determine where your student is, get that baseline. What can they do? What can't they do? But this is a little more formalized in that you're going to check it off. And this should help you in the long run. You're going to select entry points pretty much based on those entry points. They won't give you the entry point, they'll just narrow down the field for you. And it may just help you to see that your student is definitely access skills if you were unclear. It may also, I had a teacher call me yesterday and she said she used the skill survey and realized that one of her students was all on the right-hand side, and I'll show you in a moment, with the D's and E's, I think it is. And she said she couldn't justify that they would participate in the MCAS-Alt. So it may help you in that aspect when you go to an IEP team meeting. So what you're going to do is you can print it out ahead of time, give it to paras and tell them to look for these skills, or you can just do it from memory on the forms and graphs online. But I think it would probably help you if you had it right in front of you so you could remember. And here's some things that it should help you to do. It just helps you to see those full range of standards and discouraging you from choosing an entry point that's really too easy, that your student really does already know. So let's see what it looks like. So the survey has critical skills that are listed. Some have more skills than others. But what you're looking at is, can the student perform the skill rarely without support, intermittently and only occasionally, more often than not, almost all of the time without support. And then that A says student cannot perform this skill. And sometimes it's a skill that you haven't even taught. So no, they can't perform it. So it depends on, because it gets more complex as the skills go on. So you may see that depending on what content area you're working on. So keep that in mind, and then we'll take a look at how you can do this. So you can create tasks from the examples that are built into the skill survey, or you can design tasks if you want that is at the student's level. Or you can just use observations, informal assessments, progress reports, classroom work. Probably that makes the most sense. And especially if you have a lot of people working in small groups with your students, you might want to pass those skill survey out for the students that are going to be doing the assessment, so you have those filled out completely before you start. And let's take a look at what it is, because this is how you're going to select it. So here's Michael Scott. So you can see at the top, A, B, C, D, and E. There's 12 skills that we're looking at for number and operation fractions. So this student was able to do quite a few at the beginning. You know, he's fourth grade, he's got some good skills. But then you see it starts to get a little harder. He's in the C and finally ends up, there's a couple in the B. You may definitely have students that are very scattered across that. They may have some that they can't do at all, but that's our students, right? They have those splinter skills. So I think when you look at the area in which you have to choose from, that's your choice. Then you can say, you know, my student might be able to multiply. They seem to be having some trouble with multiplication of fractions, but maybe that's an area to work on. And then once you get into the entry points and look at all of them, you can make a choice from the ones that are in the resource guide. And Kevin will show you later how you get to choose them. So you want to make sure that the skill survey is completed before you choose your entry points. Okay. So as I said, you're not going to choose anything from D and E because that means the student already has the skill. If everything is an A, not just a couple, but if everything is an A and you know your student is strictly working on that motor or communication skills, then you're going to go to the access skills. But I will reiterate, you must submit one for each strand or the whole strand is incomplete. So write that in capital letters, check for skill survey before submission. Okay, so you're going to have your strand cover sheet, then you're going to slip in your skills survey. Okay, so I'm going to open this up for questions in the question and answer. I will answer some live if there's some questions that seem appropriate for everyone. So Lindsay says just the survey needs to be included in the portfolio, not the notes or the activities. That is correct. We don't want to add more to it. It may be helpful for you if you want to make notes, but it isn't necessary for us. We're just looking for the skill survey at this point this year. So Nina asked, just to clarify, the skills survey goes behind every strand cover sheet. That is correct. So every time you have a strand cover sheet, you're going to have a skills survey. We will talk about it at science. It's a little bit different, but you always have to have one. And the training B this afternoon, good question. What topics are we going to discuss? We're going to work on the data charts, the brief descriptions, the self-evaluation. So this afternoon is not the same as this morning. This afternoon is basically part 2. Okay, we're calling it training A and B, but it's part 2. We didn't think you wanted to sit here for 3 hours. Kristen wants to know if they're taking computerized assessments in which they participate, such as IXL or some other computer-based program. Can we use the data from that on the skills survey? Certainly you can use that. Can you show us a binder sample as an example? There are sample strands available on the MCAS-Alt our MCAS-Alt website. There's a few examples that you can see. And just ideas, there's different grade levels and different strands. Oh, that's a good question. I think Kevin can address this. Andrea asks if a student has a teacher for math and a teacher for ELA, does the student get 2 binders or do both teachers work in one student account and binder? So good question. Everything goes in one binder for the student. But for the forms and graphs account, you can just set up 2 different accounts, because if you share the account, you may end up overriding each other. So it's best to have 2 different accounts. Just have one person do that portfolio cover sheet with all the demographics, and the other person just has to do generic, because only one person has to print it out. Sarah. If you have a 7th grader, they don't do science and technology for the assessment. So go back and check your IEP. It's only for grade 5, 8, and high school. So you might want to check that with your special ed director. Tammy, if a student moves districts in the middle of the year, should the data from the old district follow them? Please. Thank you, Tammy, for saying that. If you are getting a student or giving a student, please be so kind as to make sure they have all the information for that student so that the teacher doesn't have to start from scratch. There is a way to transfer the data, and you can talk to me in the spring about that, or whenever they move, about that. Everything must be done in English, Mrs. Doran said. If they do synonyms and they say happy and they say it in another language, you must have it in English, okay? Everything must be done in English. Okay, I think we are good. I didn't hear the response for Part B. Part B this afternoon is not going to be the same topics. We are going to finish going through Michael Scott's strand. We're only getting to the data charts at this point. We're going to do a deeper dive into that this afternoon. So please come back this afternoon, okay? It is not mandatory. Somebody asked if it's mandatory to do the graphs online. No, but it's so much easier. It's extremely easy to do your graphs online, and you can see how Kevin does it, and then you can play with it. I don't know what you mean the old way in the Word doc, if you mean downloading it from the educator's manual and filling it out by hand. It's an easy way to miss something when you do that. So I would give it a shot to try the um, forms and graphs online. Okay, I think, let me just scroll down, make sure I haven't missed anything. Okay. So come back this afternoon for part B. A lot of you think that it's something, it's the same. It is not the same. Part B this afternoon starts at 1:30. Okay, 1:30 this afternoon. We'll talk about when portfolios need to be completed by. It's April 1st, but we talk about that again this afternoon. Is only the math, Denise wants to know, is only the math skills survey grade specific? That's an interesting question because the ELA is pretty generic because everybody has to do reading, language, and writing. The science is more generic because it's next generation or legacy. So yes, only the math is specific to the grade. Okay, I'm going to move on. You will, oh, one last one. Someone said, how do we access the recordings? The webinars will not be ready for at least another week, but they will be at that website that has been posted in the chat at least 3 times that I can see. So make sure you bookmark that so you can go back to it. Right now, the PowerPoints are there and the sample strands and everything else that you would need. So maybe at our break between sessions, you can go in there and get that information so you have it for this afternoon. Okay, I'm not going to talk about science right now because I don't want to confuse everyone. So maybe somebody, one of our teacher consultants, we have 4 teacher consultants answering questions for you. There are right-hand folks that travel with us and make sure that we stay on track and improve the process. We'll talk about accuracy and independence this afternoon in part B, Sarah. Okay, let's get going. I think we're good. Now we're going to select a skill for the measurable outcome. This is definitely highlightable moments here. So here's the strand cover sheet. It's the one we talked about as our sample strand. So it's Michael Scott. So there's his name on the top. And remember, Kevin talked about that grade 4, how important it was to use the correct grade. And then we have the content area, the strand, and the learning standard. And that's all going to be, it's all going to be done for you when you do grade 4. It'll have come up with number and operations, fractions, and operations and algebraic thinking, because those are the 2 requirements for grade 4. Then we have something called a number 5, the measurable outcome. This is so important. So the measurable outcome says that Michael will order decimals on a number line with 80% accuracy and 100% independence. So what is a measurable outcome? So I think just one more click, we should have it. This is a specific goal and it's chosen by you. It's either an entry point or an access skill, and it's in the strand or domain that's required. The measurable outcome identifies the skill that you're going to assess for that strand. You're going to add the criteria for mastery. Please write this down. The criteria for mastery does not affect the score in any way. It is only for you. It's for you to determine when the student has made enough progress to move on from that skill. You may continue to work on that skill long after you've submitted the portfolio, or You may be satisfied after 8 to 10 dates of assessing the student that even though they've only been 75% accurate or 65% independent, you're very happy with that and you want to move on. So that is your choice. That does not affect the scoring outcome. Each and every piece of evidence in that strand must document the performance of the measurable outcome. In other words, the skill that you chose is what we're looking at. Does it agree with that measurable outcome? Okay. Highlightable moments, circle that measurable outcome. Remind yourself that everything you assess must come back to the skill that you chose. Okay. Now, this is the tricky part in selecting the entry point. So the skill survey is going to help you narrow it down. But sometimes we choose one that's really too challenging or too frustrating, where the student is just like so overwhelmed, they just want to rip up the paper or crawl under the table. We don't want it that hard. That's not challenging, that's frustrating. But then you give them something that's so easy, they've been doing it their whole career, and now they can do it in seconds. They have it, they've mastered it, they get it. So you don't want to spend any more time on that. You have to find like that Goldilocks just right. Has to be challenging and attainable. And you'll know it when you find it. It's the one that they struggle a little with, but they're able to grasp the concept. So that's what you're looking for. Now, there's a lot of information on the next few slides. I'm going to remind you that you have these slides available to you. They're all on that material site. So know that they're there. Come back and look at them when you start looking for entry points, because I'm giving you information that causes teachers issues every single year that we score them. So I'm trying to say, don't do this, or be aware of what you are doing. So let's take a look at this. And these are things to consider. When you choose an entry point, you want to make sure that you're reading the whole thing. So this entry point says round whole 3-digit numbers to the nearest 100 using place value materials. So using place value material is a strategy for teaching the skill. You have to consider whether that strategy is necessary to address the skill for that student. Maybe your student doesn't need the place value materials, or maybe they only need them for a short time. So you can take that off if you don't want it. If they can still perform that skill without the place value materials, fine, take it off. However, in this entry point, the entry point says locate unit fractions on a number line. On a number line is a necessary part of that entry point. They can't be separated. You must have the number line. Okay, so I want you to be aware when you look at those entry points if it's really what you are going to be assessing and teaching. The next one, and this is always what we tell people, don't be a quick clicker. Now, when Kevin's program is awesome, and when you go in it, there's all these entry points, and it's easy to just go, oh yeah, that's the one I want, click. But read the whole entry point. So the entry point the teacher chose said answer comprehension questions in relation to a text using citations from a literary text. However, when the teacher filled out the brief descriptions on the data chart, this is what she wrote. Student answered who and what questions about the mouse and the cookie. Does the brief description match that measurable outcome? Do you see anything in there about citations? Nope. After reading The Amazing Gertrude, student answered 5 comprehension questions. See anything there on citations from a text? Nope. So is this what the teacher really meant to pick for this student? I don't think so. So if this teacher really did mean to choose this one, her brief descriptions could have said something like, student answered 6 questions based on the citation from page 7 of Freak the Mighty. The brief description matches the measurable outcome. And then each piece of evidence would document the citation from the text, the questions, and the student's answers. So be sure that there isn't a better entry point for you when there is one that says just answer comprehension questions from a literary text. And if that's what you want, make sure that that's what you choose. Because if you choose citations from a literary text, we are going to look for those citations on every data point and in all the evidence. Hope that's clear. Here are some more considerations. I feel like I want to make this a poster for everybody. Review the verb that's linked to the skill. And we'll talk about the verbs a little bit more, but every entry point has a verb. So think about your student and how they're able to do the skill. Okay. There's examples, especially in the math. There's a few in ELA, but math has examples in almost all of them. There's examples. So if you're not sure of the math, make sure that you read those examples. They're in the entry point when you look at it in the resource guide. They're also in it in forms and graphs. However, when you click the entry point in forms and graphs, that example goes away. So please review those examples to make sure you understand the concept that you're teaching. And with that being said, also make sure you understand the pertinent words or concept that you're trying to assess. So make sure you know what an equation is and how it should be done. Exothermic, attributes, things like that may trip you up when you go to do your assessment. If you're unsure of the language or exactly what the concept is, go to your gen ed person, go to your content expert. And if you need some help, you can always email me. We have content experts that we can connect you to. We also put these little notes in the resource guide. So you have to have the resource guide, which is, Kevin will show you where it's available also in the forms and graphs online. But we put these notes in there to help you. So when an entry point has something like a unit fraction, there's an explanation there of what a unit fraction is. And a unit fraction is a fraction with a numerator of 1. Okay, so just remember to assess the entry point or access skill that you choose. Now here's some pretty easy modifications. Typically, you'll use the entry point as is. Works pretty well. However, if you get to an entry point that has 2 related skills, such as this one here in option 1, solve multiplication and division word problems, the measurable outcome then says, student will solve multiplication and division word problems with 80% accuracy and 100% independence. The example that we should see is that every brief description is going to have both of those skills. So in this case, student solved 6 multiplication and division word problems on a worksheet. All the work samples, all the data points will have both skills because in the measurable outcome, you said you were going to do both skills. Now, what if you have a student that's not ready for division? You want them to work on multiplication word problems, but they're not quite ready for division word problems. What are my choices? So let's go to option 2. Oh, sorry, evidence must reflect the measurable outcome. Assess what you say you will assess. That's a t-shirt for us. Assess what you say you will assess. So let's look at option 2. So again, my students just not there for division with word problems. So I want to modify that entry point. So those 2 related skills, I'm now taking off one of those related skills. Okay. My measurable outcome now says student will solve multiplication word problems with 80% accuracy and 100% independence. My brief description now says students solved 5 multiplication word problems on a separate page, then recorded the answer on the worksheet. All my work samples, all my data points are going to document just one skill. Okay. I hope that's clear. I hope you come back to these pages when you start digging into entry points so that you'll know. Truly think, assess what I said I was going to assess. Now, Kevin's going to show you some more great features of the forms and graphs online.
Thank you, Deb. So before I get to that, the question everybody always wants to know is, where can you get it? I just dropped in the chat a link to the departments page, which is the question everybody always wants to know is where can you get access to forms and graphs? So bear with me, I'm going to switch gears again. And where that link will take you is the same page I showed you today, where you could have downloaded the full resource guides, the manual, the educator's manual. If you keep scrolling, you'll notice a link to forms and graphs. So you click that and you come here. I do ask again, please try to follow along with me. Don't try to create an account. You'll get kind of lagged behind and you miss something as we go. So just know that that link will take you to the department's resources page, and that's where you can go and straight into registration page, and you're off and running, as I showed you this morning. But now I'm going to click back in to the sample that we had running this morning. So back in my demo account, again, takes me right to my account. Student list is where you'll go 99% of the time. And here we have Michael Scott that we built out that portfolio cover sheet for earlier today. So I'm going to go into portfolio. And as I lightly mentioned before, where you will spend most of your time is working with your strand cover sheets, your strands, and your skill survey at the start. They are linked. As Deb mentioned a few times this morning, you do have to do that skill survey before you do a strand. I am going to do what you shouldn't do just to show you what happens if you try to reverse that order. So I'm going to try to create a strand first. So I will do strand cover sheet. And now, before I built a list of students, now it's prompting me to build a list of strands for the student. And it's the first time having that grade locked in starts to come into play. So when I add a new strand, and I go, and this delete, this one means it. So if you delete a whole strand, it does destroy what you have saved at that point to create room for you to create something to replace it. So if you delete a whole strand, it will take it away for good. You can't bring it back. It will say, are you sure this cannot be restored? So if you click OK, it is gone. We cannot restore that. So just don't click delete if you don't really want it to go away. Where you go most of the time is go to cover sheet. And remember, Michael, the strand sample that we're building is a grade 4. So the only thing I have access to is ELA and mathematics. And then for mathematics, I get the only 2 strands that are appropriate for a grade 4 student. So that's why it needs that grade. If this was 5, I get 2 different math strands. 6 has their own unique. So it's filtered for you to stop you from being able to do a wrong strand. So as long as it's here, you know it's appropriate for the grade that you said that student was being assessed in. Looking at that sample for Michael, we know it was math, number and operations fractions. So I'm going to select that. And when I click this, it is going to be unhappy with me. It's going to say, no, I'm not going to create that strand because you haven't done the skill survey first. So until you complete that skill survey, you cannot work on that strand. You can hop right into the skill survey by using this link, but where you will go most of the time is from the table of contents. So instead of going into your strands, you click skill survey. Kind of like building a strands, but now we're building skill survey for this student. Add a new skill survey in this red bar. It'll drop in a generic. Go. And then again, filtered for grade 4. These are the appropriate skill survey for a grade 4 student. We know we need fractions. And now you start to see a representation of what Deb was showing you in the samples a little bit earlier of this grid with A, B, C, D, and E from 0 to 100% able to do it independently. So now you're just filling in the blanks. Give it a date. And then you're just working from top to bottom. The key to remember is that every single one of these lines needs to have a selection over here for A through E. If you miss one, it's not complete and it will not unlock that strand. It'll keep giving you that you need to have a completed skill survey. By completed, it means in this case, 12 responses. So we can select what's meaningful for what the student can do. You're just clicking as you go. And once I get all 12, I can save this. And there are a lot of hidden saves just by going from one page to another. Generally, it saves behind you, but never a bad idea to just kind of force the issue and save when you leave a page. Now, when I go back to my table of contents, I can hop into my strand cover sheets. Here's that strand I had built out that wouldn't let me in until I did my skill survey. And now when I click go to cover sheet, it will allow me into that. So once I've completed that skill survey, that requirement's met, and I can start to build out my strand. And you'll notice it looks like what Deb was showing you for the samples today. It's dropped in the grade. It knows what strand I'm in for mathematics. First thing we come to is the learning standard. It's a drop down. If you have all of these memorized, if you know what that text is for that standard, good on you. Most people don't. So there's a couple different ways you can get at that. You can go back to the department's page and download the 300-page full resource guide for mathematics, or you can click this little link here. And right next to this button, Get LS Text, is a resource guide button. And what this will do is it's a little bit smart. It takes that several hundred pages of resource guide, boils it down to just the pages for the strand I'm in. So in this case, I've got number and operations fractions. So I get 15 pages, not 300 pages. And you can just scroll through. It's just a PDF. So you just find the grade. All the entry points are in here as well. You can take a look at those and start to think about what you'll use for a measurable outcome. But there's a better way to get at those, which I'll show you in just a second. But once you're here, you see the actual standard number with the text of that learning standard. So you can find the text of the standard you're after. So back into the form, looking at our sample, we know it's 4NFA2. So we just find that 4NFA2. Catches people sometimes. Once you select it, make sure you click this Get LS Text. Notice there's no text below this little learning standard box. As soon as I click this, boom, you'll see this big old block of text that drops in. It will not attach that standard to this strand until you click that Get LS Text. So just remember to actually click that. Going to skip over number 4 for now, which is level of complexity. I'll come back to that in just a second, but I'm just going to skip right over it. It's basically asking, is this an access skill? Is this an entry point? Where did you find it in the resource guide? And we come to the all-important measurable outcome. It's the key concept of creating a strand. It's the skill that you're assessing. What are you going to do with the student? What are you assessing? It is just a text box. If you know what you want to type in here, you can just type it right in here. But the real power of this site, the one feature most people really like the most, is this one button called Find Entry Points. It says entry points. It also means access skills. But when I click this, I get a now fancier version of the resource guide. It's not just a PDF anymore. So from less to more complex, it'll start you at the grade that you are at for your student. So this Michael's a grade 4, so it puts me at the grade 4 tab automatically. So these are all the appropriate skills. And the thing to remember is if you see it here, it is aligned, it is vetted, it is appropriate to use for that strand. So it's just about finding the most meaningful skill that's appropriate and challenging for your student. You can go up. If you need higher level skills, there's nothing stopping you from going up to grade 5. Those are all aligned as well. So now I see slightly higher level skills. But the reverse is true. You can go down. You can drop down to lower level grades. Standard learning standard is always at the grade. So grade 4 standard, but I can go and find a grade 3 skill to create my measurable outcome. Also worth pointing out that the access skills show up at the lowest grade for the strand. So in this case, it's grade 3. So when I click grade 3, I can find my access skills. Sometimes it's pre-K, sometimes it's grade 6. It's just whatever the lowest available strand for grade for that strand, that's where you will find the access skills. We know Michael does have one at grade. If we look at his measurable outcome, it's order decimals on a number line. There we go. So we know order decimals. Notice the EG is here as well. That's just an example of how you might address that skill, some background of particularly at the higher level math. It lets you know what the essence of that is, or an example of how that skill is used. But once you find it, and this is what Deb mentioned, being a quick clicker, it's not just take your time to find the appropriate skill, because once you click it, it's going to happen fast. It's going to grab that skill, take me back to the cover sheet, tag on the student's first name and will, drops off that EG, just gives me the root of what that skill is, and tacks on XX accuracy, XX independence. So it builds the shell of that measurable outcome for you. I hope it goes without saying, please don't leave XX accuracy, XX independence. You want to replace this. It is just a text box. You just highlight it, delete it, and type in the meaningful goal that you have for your student. So in this case, it was 80% accurate, 100% independent. So it'll do the heavy lifting of creating the shell of that measurable outcome for you. Working down this form, I'll lightly call attention to this. Deb will sort of talk about this as we get into the more evidence, but if you have accommodations or modifications, if you're scribing things for the student and it isn't very apparent when you're just looking at the work, you can just type right in this box what occurred. Maybe you use it, maybe you don't. It's not a required field by any means. It's just a way to give a little more insight into what was used to create that strand is the intent of box 6. That's where we'll leave it for now. So when you come back this afternoon, Deb's going to talk about creating the data charts and attaching evidence, and how do you enter accuracy and independence, and what's prompting, and all those things. And that's where we'll start to build out that stuff at the bottom of this form, of building out those related forms there. So that's this afternoon. That's where we'll come back to. So now I'll kick it over to Deb, who will take a couple questions and then wrap it up for the morning.
Great, thank you. It's, I do see a few questions. Nope. So do you want to go to just, so there's our questions, and then put the other one on for them, so we make sure that they know the time that we are going to come back at 1:30. And of course, now you all have to have popcorn, that you saw the popcorn because it looks so good.
And it is worth mentioning, it's the same exact link. So whatever you use to get on this morning, use that same link for this afternoon. There's not a second link for the afternoon session.
Great. And I hope that you will come back. So Mariah said, does it always have to be 80%, actually 100% independence? No, remember I said it's good for your student, but it's okay to shoot for the moon, because there is no penalty if you never get there. So if you 80% accuracy is what is considered mastery. But if you're satisfied with 70% and you've already got your 8 to 10 dates, then you can move on from there. But there are probably skills that you will continue to work on, even though you're not documenting them on the graph long after you've submitted the portfolio. You're welcome. So if you come back this afternoon, you will have had time to set up a few students, play with the forms and graphs online. It's a very easy program to use. Even my most reluctant tech people that I worked with in district found it easy to access once they once they gave it a shot. Use Michael Scott as your example and create that as a just like Kevin's doing, just using that to fill it in. You'll see how easy it is to use, and it really does save you from making mistakes. It's easy to make mistakes, especially when you're new and you've got, you're trying to juggle many things. I will give you some tips here. We got a couple minutes, is that if you can get yourself organized at the beginning for each student, and then spend time each week inputting the data into the program. You already are doing the teaching. You have to teach, so you're going to embed these skills that your students need during your daily instruction. Find a way to document and have a place to record your accuracy and independence. Teach a paraeducator how to put it in the data chart. That is the time consuming part. Make sure you talk to your administrator, see if you can get time. Is there a special that your students have that the paraprofessional can take over your class for a half hour, 45 minutes, and you can input this data. We do advocate for you at the administrative session. Dan Weiner always tells the administrators to give you time that you need to compile these. The account, so you can get the account. It's in the chat box. It's the DOE Mass EDU MCAS-Alt resources. It's right in the chat. Kevin put it in there for you. Click on that and you will take you about 3/4 of the way down the page. You'll see it says state form, and Kevin's going to give you the site there as well. There is a lot of information. I know that, and I appreciate your time. And I'm going to see you back here at 1:30. So have a great afternoon. Enjoy your lunch and see you soon.